Yo guys, what's going on? I'm Tim along with Nate, our college football expert, for those of you who don't remember, because it's been a while since college football season. First of all, there is some big news in college football right now. We're going to get to that in a second. But one thing I do want to mention is that the Real Sports Talks website will be launching at midnight, so that's in about an hour now. It will be launching, and you're going to want to follow me on Twitter at @CashKelly_TRST. That's where the link will be posted, and everything will be up. If you want to write blogs for the website, you can send them to me at cashkellynac@gmail.com. All of our videos will be posted there. There will be tons of bloggers from every different sport. There will be like columnists. It's going to be a really good website. However, big news in college football today, as something that myself and Nate have been very supportive of, not necessarily this model, but something that we have been very supportive of, is a playoff in college football, because we think that it would add more excitement to a bowl season that, in my mind especially, and Nate, you can respond to this, it's kind of gotten stale. It's something like it needed something, and I think that maybe this is it, as they have agreed to a explain who has agreed and what still has to happen basically for this to go through.
Well, the BCS commissioners and Notre Dame athletic director have agreed to a four-team format playoff, which would take probably the four highest-rated teams in the NCAA according to the polls which they annually have, including the BCS, the coaches, and the media polls. And then they would take two national semifinal games, which would determine the two national championship teams, and they would use the BCS bowl games of the Fiesta, Orange, Rose, or Sugar Bowl on a rotating basis. So one year we could see one semifinal game as the Fiesta Bowl and another as the Rose, or the Orange, or the Sugar, and so on. And then the national championship game, where that would be played, would depend on the highest bidding city. And for the semifinal game, the host sites would be predetermined before each season, so you still have neutral fields. And what still needs to happen for this to go through is the Presidential Oversight Committee, which includes a representative from each of the college football conferences, and representative from Notre Dame still have to approve of this. But to tell you the truth, Tim, I really don't think, I think this is just a stepping stone towards the future, because I think the BCS committee realizes that the bowls are done with. Everyone's starting to get tired with the bowls, and my advice would be don't do completely away with the bowls, but do the bowls and a playoff season. You do the bowls for the teams that don't make the playoffs, and then you do a playoff season during those bowl games for the teams that made the cut. And to tell you the truth, I think this all came about this year, and just this year now, because of what happened to Boise State last year. They got pushed into another non-BCS bowl after only having one loss to TCU, who was also a ranked team at the end of the year last year.
And also Oklahoma State.
Yeah, that's another big one. Oklahoma State got robbed big time. But I mean, those two teams I think have been the forerunning teams in the reason that this all of a sudden playoff draft is coming. And I don't think this is going to be the end of the playoff drafts or ideas, because I think that this four-game set is not going to satisfy people. I think they're looking for an 18 or 16 team playoff where you have more chance for excitement and for upsets.
Yeah, no, I agree with you mostly on that. The four-team thing, it needed to happen, and now the four-team thing is going to be what they do for the next probably 4 or 5 seasons. I don't know how long they're going to make the TV contract for and all those type of things, but within the next 4 or 5 years, you're right, people will probably say, okay, this is a nice start, let's build on this. 16 teams to me is too many. In college football, you look around, and usually you can tell who the top 5 teams are in the country. So I don't really have a problem with the 4, but I like the upsets. I like the factor that you could have an upset, and I like that an 8 could upset a 1, because a lot of times it's just some teams don't recruit as well, but they actually have just as good a team, and a lot of it goes by reputation in these rankings and the polls, especially in the player or the media and the coaches polls. It goes by what the reputation of the school is. So I like the idea that a number 7 seed could win a national title. I like that idea because, quite frankly, I enjoyed the bowls on New Year's Day. That was great, but the playoffs just have a different feel, and that's what college football is lacking. And I like the idea that they are going to finally listen to the fans, and it's not all fans, but it's most fans who have been asking for this. Now, of course, one of the drawbacks people are saying is that, oh, well, an 8 seed doesn't deserve to beat a number 1 seed because they haven't played as hard a schedule or they haven't had as good a season overall, and that part may be true. But I'd like people, when we watch March Madness and these teams come out of nowhere, that's what people like about March Madness, and not necessarily what I like, because I like seeing the best teams in most cases. But in college football, it's a lot. I think that a number 8 seed could beat a number 1 seed, and it's only going to be 8 teams rather than the 68 that they now have in college basketball. So I think that this is a nice number, and that all 8 of these teams legitimately, or if 8 would happen, obviously, that would be a nice number. Now 8's probably 4 or 5 years, like I said, away from happening. I doubt 16 is going to happen, because I think if you have 16, you're going to see some blowouts, and that's not what college football wants to see. If you can get or start off with the 4-team thing and make that work, then I like that idea, and we'll go from there. In a few years we can readdress this. But also with the, I do agree with you on the bowls, that the teams that don't make the playoffs should be able to have their bowls. Now I think ultimately bowls will die, but while the contracts are still there with the bowls and everything like that, allow some of these smaller teams to go into bowl games. They make a lot of money off those bowl games, and that's great. I mean, I quite frankly, I'm happy now that I don't have to sit down and watch the Meineke Car Care Bowl and all these tiny bowls that really are irrelevant, because I just don't think that they're worth watching, because they're 2 teams normally that mean nothing in the big landscape of things. Now we have this playoff system. I'll watch the playoff system. I'm a Penn State fan. I'll watch the Penn State. Hopefully in a few years under O'Brien they are back into that playoff system, and then Nate's a Boise State fan, so in a lot of years Boise State will be in these playoffs, although we'll see. And that's the one problem, is that even though I think that there's a lot of years where Boise State is one of the top 4 teams in the country, and there are the computer rankings, a lot of this still comes down to what coaches think, and a lot of it comes down to what the media thinks. And a lot of times there's going to be a team like Boise State that has 1 loss, and then we're going to look at another team in another conference. Let's just say USC's undefeated and Oregon's lost to USC and Stanford, and they're going to look at Oregon and say, well, they've had a tougher schedule and they have 2 losses than Boise State, who has 1 loss, and things could shake up a way that people still do not like.
I completely agree, Tim. And I guess the only way to solve that is by just continually doing well with that smaller school. That smaller school just has to hope that another conference, a bigger conference, will come up to them. But I think a definite way to solve that is to have like the 8-game or like an 8-game format playoff, because then you have that number 8 school, which is just on the verge of getting into the playoffs, playing the number 1. And if they upset you, that's right there is proof that that team really was as good as everyone thought they were, or everyone didn't think they were.
Yeah, the title games now probably aren't going to mean quite as much. There's going to be some years, like let's say the Big Ten title games, there's now a Big Ten title game. The way the Big Ten's been going, that hasn't really mattered to the landscape of the top 5, because Ohio State's had all their issues. Michigan's on the way back up. Penn State, who knows what's going on with Bill O'Brien. And, I mean, there's some other schools that are in that conference that certainly make runs. Michigan State, you get the point. But if you look at the SEC, in a lot of years, the SEC title game is who decides who goes to the national championship. With 4 teams in it now, the SEC title game might not mean quite as much, so the ratings might go down. So certain people in the SEC might decide that they don't like this playoff system, and I think that goes for the Pac. It's still called the Pac-10, but however many teams are in it now, I think it's 12. There's going to be people that are voting against this. So do you think it's a lock that this gets passed?
I think the only major concerns with this getting passed is going to be what everyone else is worried about, what a lot of commissioners are worried about, is school schedule and the academic calendar in the regular season. And I think that championship games for the separate conferences would pertain to the regular season. And I think a lot of them are going to be angry in the beginning when those ratings eventually drop further. But once they see that those two national semifinal games and the national championship game get more and more views, and I think that money will be distributed out a bit better, or maybe just among the two schools or over the whole NCAA. I think they'll realize that it was better in the long run.
Yeah, and to me, this is going to make college football more watchable because I'm not a fan of a team that's always right there. I'm a fan of a team that's been close, but in my lifetime has never been to a national championship game. And a lot of times it's when, you know, if Penn State loses to Iowa, like they always seem to do in that stretch where they had Daryl Clark, if they lose to Iowa, then their season's done. And really, I'll sit down and watch, but why? I'm not going to make it my whole day to sit down and watch a game where I know my team has no chance to go to the national title. Now, one loss, you could still make it somewhere. And one loss in the SEC, and a lot of times you still could make it to the national title. But now, one loss in another conference, you could potentially still win a national title. And that's why I'm still in favor of the 8-game over the 4-game, or the 4-team, I should say, the 8-team over the 4-team. But this is a nice start, as you said. This will be podcasted on the Real Sports Talk website, as will everything that we do for the college football broadcast throughout these entire year, or throughout the entire season with myself and Nate, and as will everything we do. And we got the NBA Finals, we got MLB, NFL, NASCAR, tennis, any sport you could think of, except... Oh yeah, and we also have added like golf, or no, we haven't added golf. We've added boxing. Tons of stuff are going to be on this website, and it's up to you guys to make it a success. So I hope you will do that. Nate, great vid. Hit me up on Twitter at CashKelly_TRC, and also like the Real Sports Talk official Twitter at TR Sports Talk. And Nate, what's your Twitter handle?
It's at Nader Sarms.
All right, check that out as well.
RMS.
Alright, check that out as well. Keep checking out the Real Sports Talk at youtube.com/MrKelstar. And follow me on Twitter again because the website launches in about an hour. We will see you guys later.